I'm K.C.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Eric.
And you're listening to
The Element Podcast. What is going on, all my woods people? We are hanging out in the Ladybug Love Seat here here in the Emory, and it's awesome. You know how like people have those ceilings that when you lay down, it's like there's a star, starlit sky. When you lay down here, you got ladybugs everywhere.
You can reverse expose it and maybe have that.
That's right. It's negative art, man. Yeah. It's negative art. For some reason, there's a ladybug hatch going on outside right now, and our house is built out of seconds and surplus, so we have crooked doors that let bugs in, and we've got bugs everywhere in this brand new house, so I'm awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, there are some awesome things that have been going on for the Element, and I'm sitting here with K.C. Smith, who everybody knows, and Eric Gentry, who some people know.
You need to know.
Who they need to know. And we are getting ready to head out again to a couple different areas, different states. But we just got back from Kansas not long ago. Actually, for us, not long ago. It's been about 5-6 days for you. 5 days?
I got back
Wednesday,
so I've been back 4 days.
Yeah. So, but we're about to head back out tomorrow morning, I think, and go get after them. We had some pretty awesome things happen in early November, for sure. Big blessings. Moments. KC likes to say that every day's a blessing, but they're just like those blessings that you get that are just like above and beyond what normally happens, that you just have to be so thankful for, man. And we are definitely thankful right now. But anyway, I guess we're going to kind of start from the beginning and not bore you too much with the details that aren't fun, because there's a big, long story involved around a deer that Mr. K.C. shot. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Cat's out of the bag, guys. Tyler and I both have shot bucks in Kansas.
Yep.
So
T-egged out.
Yeah, I would imagine there'll be a follow-up episode to discuss Tyler's, because we've been looking at these deer a lot, and my buck's really big. But just to let y'all know, Tyler's is like quite a bit bigger. So it's scary.
I don't know, dude.
Listen, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 giant bucks on your wall, and that deer's bigger than every single one of them.
Yeah, it's weird.
6 giant bucks on your wall.
And 2 upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's bigger than the big one up there, too.
Insane.
It is insane. For the first time when I came home the other night after riding with that thing in the back seat, every few minutes I would literally look back and go, like Eric can vouch for me, and I was like, I would look back and go, it's still a big old bug. Never meaning no harm.
Y'all are silly. Yeah.
But I came home and I was like, for the first time ever, I was like, these bugs don't look as big as they used to. It's weird, dude, But now I'm kind of like, oh, they are big.
Yeah, they're big. They're
I
big,
definitely
for sure.
placed them so that I could sit on the couch and see how big they are, as opposed to be over there when I was thinking that. But anyway, I had a big issue during the rut this year, and it was what we assumed was food poisoning because nobody else in camp got it, and there's 5 other dudes in camp.
Yeah, that's a weird thing because we all ate the same stuff too.
Yeah.
So
who knows, man?
Who knows, man?
They got that one piece of E. coli on it or whatever.
I don't know, but yeah, that stunk for you, man. Thankfully, you didn't die, and also thankfully, our hunts started out a lot differently. It's going to be hard to tell this without intertwining our stories somewhat, but we'll definitely have more to tell about yours as well. But just, I think long story short, you were chasing a giant buck on a different piece of property.
Yeah, on some private.
Yeah, and so your hunt was a lot different than mine in that you were able to still hunt while you were sick because it was just a lot easier access and not running around. You're hunting out of a tree a lot. Not hanging
as much.
Yeah, but you still had to do a decent amount of work by yourself.
The worst part was a 35-minute drive every day. I'm telling you, dude, once I got onto ranch roads, it was like, y'all can't see that, but I'm talking like, look like Shakira up in this truck.
That was a bumpy face.
And I was about to throw up every second of the day, dude. I'm talking, I would get out of my truck to go hunt, throw up, hang out in the stand for 3 hours, and come back and throw up. And it was terrible. And I was literally like, the only thing I could do was hunt and sleep. Like I would come back in the morning and I would sleep, and then I'd go back out and hunt and come back and sleep. And in like 4 days, I ate like 2 Buc-ee's burritos, breakfast burritos that are, if you've seen them, you know they're not the biggest burritos, and banana and a half, and like one other thing was all I ate for like 4 days, man. And it was. I'm actually still pretty bummed about the whole thing because my dad and Drew were there, some buddies of ours, you know, and it was just it would have been a good time. It's my favorite time of the year is for everybody to get up there, just have a good time and rib each other and, you know, help each other and everything else.
Because that hunt's the one where we're all going to be there.
Yeah.
And then after that, you never know who's going to be where and what.
Well, I missed it.
And we're all, like, it's over now pretty much. You know, we're probably not going back there to the house this year because.
I'm probably going to go bird hunt.
Yeah. When is that? I was thinking about that.
They usually do that in January, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, so basically, though, we were going to stay there for a long day. You had like 9 days planned, right? Mm-hmm. And I was sick. You guys were working hard on some public stuff. And we have a couple of permissions up there. One of them, we finally checked the truck on it. It was not lighting up like we wanted it to. Lots of nighttime still, which has been the case the last 2 years now. So kind of frustrating. But you're on public, and you guys are seeing a lot of bucks, right?
Man, we did.
Eric was seeing more than you were, probably.
Double. For sure, you know, at least those, it's called buckbrush, I think is what they call it.
That's
right?
it. That's it.
But so the first evening we kind of all got there, you know, it took forever to get there, but we kind of got there just in time to kind of go out and do some setups or whatever. And why did we decide to go over? So we went up way far and went to some ground hunting stuff that we knew we wouldn't be hanging in cruisers or anything in because, I don't know, we'd seen the big deer there before or something. I don't know why. But, you know, this stuff all starts running together. We have a thing we like to call Groundhog Day where we go on these hunts and it's the same thing over and over and over again. Tyler coined that last year, I think.
With the ranch buck
thing. And it really is the case on some of these hunts, especially a rut hunt because, like, I don't know. You're doing a bunch of scheming, but at the same time, it kind of ends up being the same kind of day almost every day.
Well, and also during the rut, you're like, man, if I just sit there again, he's going to come through that day because he was with those yesterday, but he's cruising today. You know? Yeah. So you sit the same spot a million times.
We made it up there just in time to like go out for an evening kind of hunt / glass, and you know, we're on public land, and when you're hunting public, there's going to be people around, and sure enough, there was on this thing, too. Blue Jean Davy showed up.
Blue Jean Davy.
Yeah. And just kind of lackadaisically strolled down into the drainage that we were hunting. And
that was like what?
Well, he just let the wind blow him that way, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He just wind bumped him. I don't know. I felt like that was pretty late in the evening.
It was like 45 minutes before sunset, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
Which, I mean...
And he sat there for a while. He got there a long time before that.
Oh, yeah. You know how it is during the rut, especially on like those warmer days. Like the evenings are really good, but it's the last little bit of time. And this dude walked in right at the last little bit of time into the range that we were hunting. So we're like, well, I guess we're going to leave. And I don't know. I don't think he was intentionally busting us up or too much. You know, he just kind of rolled down in there and was going, you know, rainbow one over at a buck, but we were kind of hit out pretty good. But we bailed. We were actually had our decoy with us, and Billy is what we call him, the big buck, not the what's that thing called?
2-dimensional heads up.
Yeah, the heads up decoy. We had the flambeau with us,
Flambeezy,
which for a cheaper decoy looks pretty good, I think.
Yeah, me too.
We bailed and went to this other spot and didn't see much. So after that evening, we're like, well, man, that kind of stunk. And I guess just because we're gluttons for punishment, went back to the same place the next morning. I don't really know why we decided to go back there. Maybe the winds didn't work out good for the other stuff we were looking at, but decided to go back, glassed there in the morning. And actually, no, we went and set up that morning.
Yeah.
Set up decoy and did some rattling and grunting. And things got serious real quick. And that's when we decided that, hey, this actually is worth doing. Because we were seeing a buck across the drainage, and while we were looking at that buck, another buck pops up at like 60 yards over this rise, and I'm like, "Oh, Eric, shooter right here!"
Y'all had y'all's Yankee
saw Billy
accents
too, right?
going.
Yeah, he saw Billy. I think I don't know if he saw him at first or if he came out there when the rut's going on. You don't know if they're coming to your grunting and rattling, or if they are. Just kind of strolling through that area, or if they're zombie mode, like what is going on, right? But we do see a buck who is a definite shooter, day one shooter for me. I mean, I'm always like when we go to Kansas, I'm trying to kill my biggest buck ever, which for me is not a giant, but it keeps getting bigger. So
Is that for nice. The YouTube title?
Biggest buck ever, probably.
Yes.
I would imagine that would be definitely YouTubeable. But this deer may or may not have scored out like that, but he was big. And we still have yet to like officially score about near anything that either Tyler and I have shot together. So it doesn't really matter that much.
People been asking me.
Oh man, people message me about your deer, like what Tyler's deer score.
I'm like, dude, he ain't that high a score.
Dude, I don't know. Like it's just a big old buck.
Yeah.
So this buck comes in. And is, of course, coming in from a direction that we did not set up for, and is pretty much going to hit our wind before we get a shot. But I'm always optimistic. And I'm like, well, maybe, he goes down this ditch and the wind blows over the top of his head. And sure enough, he comes back up out of the ditch the way he came in with his butt pointed at us. So he only probably got 45 yards away. Maybe I should have been flinging arrows, but I'm really not big on shooting at deer that are really alert and know that you're there. Much past 20 yards. So, a little pro tip there. As really not cool people like to say, don't ever say that. It's my least favorite.
Sorry, I think I've said that before.
But as this deer's running away, we see that he's most likely a mainframe 8 with really long brow tines, pretty wide, big frame, and has like a 4 or 5 inch drop tine off of the back of his beam, kind of between his brow and his G2. So,
dude, he's so big.
He's big, man.
He's big frame, dude.
Yeah,
and he's a drop tine. Like how often do you get to?
That's
chance?
the thing, dude. Like drop tines are worth points.
Yeah,
like not antler points,
style
but like
points.
Style points. Like it might not be your biggest buck, but man, dude, he's got a drop tine. Like, how cool is that? Big. And this, by all means, is a mature, a relatively mature Kansas mature deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
relative to Kansas.
Yeah,
at
relative
least.
to Kansas. So we're crying and real sad. And like, I'm telling Eric, I was like, oh man, that was our chance. I'm kind of a little bit down about it because it's just, we've been doing this ground thing long enough that we understand that it don't work out very often. And Eric's learning that real quick, too. You actually did a lot of ground stuff for your first couple years hunting, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And how often does it work out?
Yeah, it's still waiting to shoot my first one. So.
It is hard, isn't it? Ground is tough, man. And that was the idea with doing the decoy thing, is that maybe that would kind of help be able to pull off some shots and stuff. And I don't know, if the wind was different, that would have been a different situation.
I think the key to ground hunting is proclaiming that it's a mega before you go in. You have to use the term mega because that's what everybody's using right now.
Well, I said that later this day, and it didn't work. So I don't know what to tell you.
It didn't?
No.
Mega.
I called you and told you.
Did you say mega?
Mega.
Okay, just making sure.
Because I wanted
that's
you
what
to,
everybody's saying. You
I
have
wanted
to say
you to
it.
know, Chancey, it's his fault, dude.
Yeah. Thought he was a Magnum guy though.
He's
Is
mega.
He's mega.
But
he's
he might say Magnum too.
What's the new one? It's something Jungle Punk is what it is.
I'm not going to say that. That's not my style.
I mean, I don't know how much jungle Chancey's been hunting.
That's more of a Iaconelli type deal. I'm more of an Ichiro kind of guy. Not Ichiro. What am I trying to say?
Oh no,
Takahiro.
Suzuki, Takahiro.
Got my Japanese guys mixed up there.
Trying to tiki stick.
That's it. Anyways, Eric and I are licking our wounds over that, and it's pretty much over at this point in time. We also glassed that deer across the canyon, which I'm interested to look at the footage and see what deer that is. What?
Oh, I think it's in Rush Hour where which Chris Tucker?
Tucker,
in Rush Hour. He tells Jackie Chan, "All y'all look the same to me."
I believe Rush Hour 2, Jackie Chan does the same thing back. They like to do
Y'all
that.
look the same to me.
Yeah. So like we saw bucks a lot over there, right? So I'm interested to see what that buck across the canyon was on the footage, see if we know him. But that doesn't really matter too much at this point in the story. Eric and I decided to hop drainages to go to a different spot, and we're actually in the truck, I believe. Kind of like, well,
the buck truck?
Yeah, the buck truck. It's definitely the buck truck these days. Like, no question.
Dude, how many bucks
all
is that truck
credit to Hunter,
seen?
right? After all this,
I mean, it would only seen maybe a couple of bucks in Kansas this year if Hunter wasn't a part of it.
Yeah, exactly right. Just because Hunter existed, things went good. Which, by
the way, let me quick plug. I keep cutting you off, but Hunter killed a buck recently, and that video is getting ready to come out real soon. So make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, and you can see that. It's a really nice East Texas buck, man.
Big East Texas buck, dude. Which is for me is a ghost.
It is a ghost.
So, anyways, and we spot some deer working down into this drainage from ag. And I was like, oh, interesting. We got like a little spot and scope that's not real powerful, but kind of tell something off of it, and did some phone scoping. And then they kind of worked closer. And did we bail off in there to go take a look at them? Because we ended up out there in the drainage.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when we had the phone scope out on the planes, right? It wasn't in the truck, so yeah.
Oh, we didn't do the phone scope in the truck?
I think it was when we were sitting there kind of watching them and calling Tyler.
Did we took Billy down in there, didn't we?
Yeah.
We were thinking they were going to move all the way down, and they didn't. So we put Billy down there in the bottom, and they didn't. They bedded up in the kind of up higher in the drainage. So we kind of back up a little bit up the hill to get glass on them. You remember something?
I know what we did. We didn't go to the truck. We went straight to the drainage and went down to the creek bottom to try to rattle first, and that's where we left Billy because remember we were going to try to hunt down there.
Yeah.
And you walked back up the hill and spotted the buck, and then I came up to you and we kind of left our stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so then realized that this buck is a mega. And decided to call in all the troops and said, hey, Tyler, we're not, just so y'all know, we're not sharing the location of game via phone, but it was much more of a, hey, come over here.
Hey, come help.
Yeah, I need you here because we see a big
I didn't
deer.
bring my bow, so you weren't telling me about a deer that I could go kill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Making sure we're legal here, So what we decided to do is try to stalk this deer when Tyler gets there. Well, he's in a pretty stalkable position. And before Tyler
bedded?
Yeah.
Like laid down?
Yeah.
Is that how you stalk them normally?
Well, with carrots and onions and celery. But I usually stalk them when they're bedded. Mm-hmm. I don't. What joke are you making?
He said position. I was bedded as opposed to standing on two legs or something like that.
Heinz medicine sauce juice acronym that Anthony likes to use. But he was in this little depression that was between two hills, and we're like, okay, the wind works out pretty good. I think we could get fairly close to this deer. And we planned on kind of slipping up there and using the heads up and seeing if we could challenge him and make him stand up and get a shot. Well, before Tyler can get there, a dadgum coyote, I think, sees us and spooks up to the drainage those deer are in, ends up walking within 15 yards of them. They all get up and get weird, and they bump and bed in a much more difficult spot to approach. So that's what we're working with now. And we decide once Tyler shows up, we kind of get eyes on the deer. You walk through the drainage and see him, and I'm not still not convinced you saw the same deer because I'll walk down through there and I don't know how you could see that thing
Dude,
from where you were.
I'm telling you, I know I saw him because it was the widest load I've ever seen.
Yeah, I guess we should tell you a little bit about this deer. I'm not going to get too descriptive, but he is the biggest frame buck I've probably ever seen on the hoof. And when we were in South Dakota, I saw I saw a deer that I'm convinced would be a Boone and Crockett buck. So this deer has one of those mega giant frames, maybe 20 inches wide, and super duper long main beams, and masked for days. I mean, seriously, grown man can't wrap their hands around the basis type mast, right? So big buck, like once in a lifetime buck for me. I feel like on public land, and so we are gonna make an effort at this thing. And Tyler and I, we've done this enough. And Eric's a cool cat, so he's right there with us. Like, we already know it's not going to work out before it starts, but we can compartmentalize mentally to where we're not like a team that's going to go play a football game. They're going to lose. We're still going to go out there and give it our best effort, but it's just a coping mechanism for how often it fails. Because I can remember the first time it failed on the ground, Tyler and I were just crying like, "Oh, we were so close!" And now we're like, "Oh, that's cool, whatever."
Yep.
And so we decide that Eric is going to film from afar. Tyler's going to go with me with the decoy and film, and I'm going to be the hunter-shooter type guy. So we do that. And one of the problems with deer on the ground is not the deer you're hunting, but the deer around it. And that's kind of the thing, whether you're in a tree or on the ground or whatever, right? Like your ranch buck from last year, he didn't spook. Well, you still got the shot off, right? But he wasn't getting weird because of you. He's getting weird because the doe's getting weird because of you.
That's right.
And those dadgum slick-head nannies are always just trying to pick you off.
Old mule heads doing what they can.
No slicks, mule heads, what are you going to call them? Frozen pond noggins.
That's it, man.
That's it.
But stomping.
They don't like you at all. And
they also love to make a scene.
They do. They're dramatic.
I don't know. I'm not saying nothing about women or nothing, but
these
does like to make a scene.
They're saying things translate across the species pretty good.
Hopefully not CWD, though.
Hopefully not. Anyways, I'm not going to go into that too
Digress.
far. But, yeah, let's get back on task here, KC. We stalk in, and actually, it's very stalkable up to about 90 yards. And then it gets bad. And I don't know if y'all bow hunted much, but 90 yards is not bow range. So unless you're Levi, which I'm fully convinced he can do it, man. I don't even criticize that guy. He rips them. But anyways.
I feel like Mike Hunsucker could shoot one at 92.
He might could, dude.
That dude never makes a bad shot, man.
He's pretty good. But Tyler and I get to about 85. And we get to some yuccas that are actually pretty good. And we are going to, at 85 yards from this buck, do the whole stick the decoy up and snort wheeze and see if we can get him to come closer. And it had a chance. It really did. This buck wasn't super fired up, though. It's November 2nd. And you could kind of tell what his tempo was. While we're trying to get in position to pull this off, I don't know if the doe just happened to catch us moving or if...
No, you remember...
All right, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I think she might have heard my boot crack a stick or squeak or something because there was a sound, but it wasn't very loud. But
you remember there was a deer that came from the east.
Oh, that made them weird before. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think they were just like...
They were already weird.
Yeah.
Because this deer randomly at 10:15 or 10:30 or whatever it is... I remember we didn't eat lunch till 1:30 that day, so whatever that makes it for whenever we're messing around up there. That deer comes in from the east out of nowhere trying to join up. I think it was a little spike. And Tyler and I are good and concealed from the north, which was where our big buck is. But from the east, we look like two dudes on the prairie, you know? So,
well, that's the thing is like, where did this deer come from?
Yeah.
Wide open, middle of brush.
That's the thing is that, early rut, it's after pre-rut, right? But early rut, those young bucks are already cruising, and the big boys are smart enough to know, like, hey, I don't really have to go out and lose 20% of my body weight on November 2nd, like I can kind of conserve for a little bit. And I think that's what was going on is that spike, he didn't even know what he was feeling, but he was feeling something, so he needed to go west.
Yeah.
And
go west, young man.
That's right. That's what he was doing. And he spotted us and got weird, but the other deer didn't spook, but they got weird too. And then we were getting in position, and either my boot squeaked or that doe just saw us or something, and just popped a little doe head up out of the grass. And after that, it was like, well, this kind of last ditch at this moment, right? Like it's like it never goes good when the doe sees you first. That's kind of what I've kind of seen from the ground stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
so what KC's kind of saying, I think, is if we'd have had a chance to get that buck angry before things got real weird and there was 4 does standing on the feet and he was like, what are they doing? Yeah. That things could have been a lot different.
Yeah, the first thing he heard was as opposed to
seeing does standing up looking at
whipping
something.
their heads around,
after a coyote came in and a spike and whatever else.
It was destined to fail, but you have to try. And you know what? All those failures we're learning stuff from. And tell you the truth, on day 7 and 9 of the hunt, all those failures kind of built to something. So it's good. But I'm not going to bore you too much with details. I should have been flinging arrows at 85 while those deer was looking at us. I don't know. You can't really do that on video, so that's my caveat. But he's a giant, and it's real hard to just not be like, man, I could do this. How far is he? But it's not the responsible thing to do. And what ends up happening is that buck gets weird, and he's actually the first one to spook out of there. And they run off kind of to the west and out of our lives that morning.
This proof what I said a long time ago, or not a long time ago, but a while back when we were talking about this. But
what was it?
The does were the first ones to see us, stand up, and figure things are kind of weird, and the buck is the first one to leave. People always are like, "Oh, that old nanny doe, man, she's the wisest one in the woods," and I just don't believe it. I think the buck is, man. No. I think the buck is the weirdest creature in the woods, man.
Yeah, they are weird, man. And you can't ever factor for this. But one of these days, we're going to do it just to see if it works. And we're going to have to do it with 2 bows. That's how we're going to have to do it. But we're going to send a exit route guy, and then we're going to send a just things go perfect guy.
Yeah.
Because we could have got to that corner of that fence and no problem. Yeah. So if you would have went up there and just been like, hey, I'd have had a deer in my throat, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the way they went. But, whatever.
Yeah.
Can't expect that kind of thing to happen. You want the ideal thing to happen. And, I don't know. I guess I used to always think in my head as a little kid living on Lake Fork, right? I was like, man, what's the best way to make sure you catch a big bass? And I was like, well, what if 12 boats all drop their lures down right and surrounded this fish that have to bite one to get out, and that doesn't work, of course, right? The same kind of thought goes well, what if we all just ganged up on him and he had to run by somebody? Sounds pretty dangerous, but that's how that morning went. And we're going to have to do some day skipping and stuff because I can't really remember.
We had a bunch of foggy days the next few days.
I think that the idea is that this buck consumed you the first few days, first several days.
Honestly, up until the day I killed.
Yeah.
Because we were seeing him off and on the whole time. Like Eric was saying, we had some foggy days. Probably the next 2 days were those foggy days, weren't they? It rained a little bit, and we just did what's called socked in. Talk about that up sheep hunting and stuff, but that's kind of how it was there too. You could see about 40 yards, and we all talked about it and decided that this buck was worth focusing on, which is not something that I'm accustomed to. And I don't know if it's really for me too much. However, in this case, I was more than willing to do it. And I would do it again. If you see a deer big enough, then it's okay. I'm very much like the public land mentality of
shoot the first 140 that comes by.
Shoot the first 140 you see, pretty much. In Kansas is kind of the rule, right? But just in general, like Texas or wherever, seeing something, getting excited about it and shooting, it's pretty fun, and not knowing them. But, history's cool too, but makes for a fun story, and I'll talk about that deer for a long time anyways, just because we hunted so hard for him. But
a few evenings later, though, we did see him fight a certain buck.
That was like that evening.
Was it that evening? Well,
yeah.
Remember we had we went down after that, and that's when we saw him again.
Yeah. So that evening, day 2, we got to tell that part of the story. So the morning is a wash. The evening, we're pulling in kind of late because it's kind of warm that afternoon. I think it's about 4, and this is before time change, so 3 o'clock now times. Y'all like that? Now times. I'm so glad we participate in this ridiculous thing called daylight savings time. But anyways, we are pulling in. We're going to go drop off in this bottom, assuming that they went south, and we're going to come up north because that's the wind we had. And we did just that. But on the way in, we saw two giants about a mile away fighting as hard as I've ever seen deer fight. Like if you could put fighting on a scale from 1 to 10, these bucks are at 9s. I mean, they are getting it. Deer falling on the ground, going at it for 5 minutes, like two mega giants. Mm-hmm. That's all you can really tell about them at that distance, because it's pretty far. And there's an apparent winner and a loser. The loser heads off into the sunset or whatever, kind of slowly, just thinking about life. It literally walks up to the fence and looks at it for 10 minutes. And we see the other buck go down with the does and drop down into the same drainage we're fixing to go hunt. And we're thinking, oh, man, that's a good buck. I didn't know who it was. We're like, okay. They're in the drainage. The ag's at the other end of the drainage. Let's go. So we drop in there and decide to not use a decoy that night because we didn't want to freak out the does because they're usually in front, right? And does don't like decoys. That's straight up. No. They don't like decoys, guys. The way that people kill deer over decoys is when it's a buck by himself. You can watch that too. It plays out time and time again. You will go watch Hunsucker and those guys at Heartland. They hunt with decoys a lot, and they're always killing cruising bucks doing that usually. So we decided to not use a decoy, but we got down and we're feeling good about our setup. Like, okay, if these deer come down on the bottom of this drainage, then we're going to have a 20-yard shot, just broadside, straight up money. Well, Eric and I are sitting there. We don't have phone service, so we're not really that distracted, but we're just kind of zoned out because we've been there probably 30 minutes, and we're thinking, okay, it's the evening. The movement's going to be, pretty late. We're just going to chill and watch these doves fly over our heads for a while. And all of a sudden, we hear something like, and out of nowhere, there are deer galloping past us, like not running, but like imagine if a deer had to cover country quickly. That's what they were doing. They weren't running for their lives, but they're like, how do I cover 2 miles as fast as I can? And that's what they're doing. There's does just zipping past us. I don't even have time to count. But we heard that, and you and I think both were registering this at the same time. We're like, man, that sounds like deer, and then there they are, right?
By the time we realized we were looking left, and the giant was looking at us.
Yes, so the giant's right behind them, and I don't know what happened. He caught us doing something, or we were just two brown blobs sitting there. I don't know, but sure enough, he's like galloping, and then locks it up and looks at us, and who knows what I should have done, but he didn't die, so I should have done something different. But
you ever heard of this thing called a rifle?
Yeah,
that's what we should be doing.
If I had a 30-30 or a 45-70 right there, he'd have been on the ground. So the closest I've ever been to a giant buck, 20 yards on the ground right there, and he sees us, and they run out to like 60 or 70, and then we're behind cover, so they don't really know what's going on. But there's a doe that can see us, and she's getting weird and starts blowing, so I stand up. I'd already adjusted my pin to 70, and I was like, okay, if he's still standing there, I'm going to – because I kind of knew about 65 or 70 yards of where he was. And I was like, okay, that's kind of – as far as I care to shoot at a deer, right? And in this scenario, y'all can call me what you want to, not y'all, because I know y'all are on my page. But like when there's a deer that big, you're thinking of your extreme limits, right? Because it is that time, right? My dad always likes to say the Indians, they didn't wait on ethical shots,
dude.
And
I'm telling you, that's what I would think too, man.
I'm not saying I'm promoting being unethical, but like we need to take the PC out of it and really think about like what you can do. And I shoot 70 a lot and feel really good about it. And I ain't shooting a doe at 70, but like, guys, let's be honest with each other. Like shooting a giant antlered buck is really cool. And I'm going to do what I can to make it happen.
That's right.
But to say all that, I didn't take the shot because as soon as I stood up, a doe ran off and he ran off, and I at least got to draw my bow on him. That was fun. They run off and go out of our lives again. And then Eric and I drive home and cook supper early because at that point in time, what do? Just wait on a 120 to come by?
Well, you don't draw footage because you didn't have any.
That's exactly right. Oh, I'm glad y'all are listening to the podcast because we don't have anything else of this thing. Eric was filming something B-roll style with a different camera. And what happened on that?
I think just by the time he was already staring at us, like I didn't want to move, anymore because he was already staring at us.
And so we just...
And then he was gone.
And it's not like... I was like, what are you doing, Eric? Right? Because it didn't happen.
No.
So not a big deal, but fun part of the story. So the next evening, we decide to... we get socked in the next morning. We decide the next evening, okay, well, let's just play for the pattern and hope it works. We got down to the bottom again, got in better cover, got out of the line of sight of deer, which I think was a mistake of us. We were on the same level as them, and I got up a little elevated to where I'd be shooting down at deer that were coming through the bottom. And we set up the decoy because we're like, okay, well, if that decoy had been set up there, they would have all locked it up and looked at him, and we could have got a shot. I love the whole adage of hindsight is 20/20 because it is so true in deer hunting, right? It's very cliche, but so accurate. So we set up the decoy that night. Well, ends up the big buck was not south of us that evening. Eric and I are sitting there, and we look up about 200 yards above us, and there he is, just skyline looking down like he's Mufasa, right? Just how many deer have been named Mufasa lately, man? Golly. Sorry, Trent. Everybody wore that one out for you, but he's like, I don't know if he's grunting or what, but it's like he stood up there. And then all of a sudden, does came up from the bottom. It's like he told them to come up there. That's it. And so we're like, well, here we go, whatever. And we don't really try. Actually, we did go up to try to see if we could see them, and we couldn't. So hunt was over. It got dark, so we were about to go down and get Billy, and then we saw a giant other buck in the bottom when it was too dark. I think Eric was relieving himself and saw the deer, which was really cool because Eric is not the most fleet of vision guy around. He tries real hard and sees a lot of deer, but then confirms few of them. But he was the guy. He was the guy who saw this one. I was like, "Where? I don't see a deer." And then he tells me where it's at. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's a deer at 40 yards just looking at us." And put my binos on. I don't think we got footage of that either because it's too dark.
Way too dark.
But I put my binos on it, and it was a big buck. I don't know which one. It very well could be the deer that I ended up shooting because it kind of looks like that kind of frame, or it might be the deer that Tyler shot. But I don't think it was quite that big.
No.
But it's a big buck. So that was kind of like there's more than one in here kind of thing for us that night. And then I don't really know what happens from there on, but
more buck encounters.
More buck
Y'all
encounters.
were all over them this week.
We rattled in a buck to like 20 yards. Or actually, no, we didn't even rattle that deer. He just walked up on us.
That broken 8-point?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the next morning, the morning after that. Yeah, big body sucker, broken G2.
The footage is outstanding, dude.
It's epic. Snot comes out of his nose. It's so cool. 4K, that's going to be legit. But I'm seriously considering shooting this deer, even though he's about 100 inches less than the deer that we're hunting, because he's just swole neck. There's actually a shot where there's a fence post in the way of the deer's head, but you can see antlers hanging out each side, and his neck muscles are sticking out each side of the fence post. He's just ripped, dude. He's so cool. But that deer ends up kind of getting weird and running off, and I wasn't too upset about it because I wanted to shoot a bigger deer than that, but man, it was so much fun. Like, it was kind of like, okay, this is going to be cool. Like, you're out there to have fun, right? It's a big hodgepodge of a lot of different factors that go into like a hunt, right? And that one was pretty fun from the ground, good footage. Why not, right? But it didn't happen. That's okay. So a couple mornings later, I don't really know. This is probably, this is the morning. Let's just say day 6, right? Or day 7. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I'm glassing. Eric is glassing in a different hill. We split up so that we could kind of cover all the ground because I think we actually went a day without seeing the big buck. So we're like, well, let's see if we can locate him. And if not, we're going to go hunt deer and shoot a deer tonight. We are glassing him up, and I see the big deer way off, like 2 miles. And he's way up on some private in some ag fields chasing does around. And he ends up kind of meandering his way towards the public. And I see him go down in a ditch. And they are actually really, really close to public. And I'm assuming he makes it onto public. That's a phone noise, by the way. There you go, Eric. Sorry for the aliens, guys, but this deer ducks down in to public pretty far from me. Like, okay, that is cool. There's a chance we get to go pursue this buck. And then about that time, I holler at Eric, and he's like, hey, you should come over here too, because there might be a few deer over here. So I run up there, meet with Eric, and while we're sitting there, a giant buck goes down the side of the hill, and we can't find him. And we're like, okay, well, let's see if we can rattle at this buck and see if we can draw him out. No avail, right? Doesn't happen. This deer ends up being the buck that Tyler shoots. So Eric was not lying when he says giant. However, Eric was a man on, lone man on a mountain saying that it is not the same deer, I promise, until we busted out the footage like 2 days ago, and he had to admit it was the same deer. But I think his binos are fogged up that morning is what was going on. But
that's what we'll blame.
Yeah, that's right. You did have some foggy binos. I remember you were getting those lens cloths after those things. But as we're walking out, we spot another big buck bedded looking at us. And we're thinking about trying to make a move on him, and he made the decision for us, got up and went down in this bottom that we just couldn't figure out where he went. And that deer very well might be the deer I ended up shooting. So we leave there, go try to find the buck, the giant buck, and can't turn him up at all. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that was a mistake. I probably shouldn't have left those, that deer to go find other deer. But it is what it is. So we go drive around, come in from a different direction, can't find the big buck, and we're kind of like, well, whatever. So we go back and hunt that evening, no luck. Decide to go back the next morning and set up in a real stupid spot, because that's what you have to do sometimes to kill big bucks, it seems. That evening I'm skipping, we went in and did something kind of stupid, and it was real fun, but we didn't kill the deer, and we didn't see him. But we snuck in, like, on our bellies, like, into his bedroom, and he wasn't there. But on the way in, his does, 5 of the 6 that we'd been seeing him with, walked, like, 15 yards from us, like, almost stomped on us. They were mad at us, too. They did not leave there completely undisturbed, I'm not going to lie. But we had a fun sit that night as well, but didn't turn up the buck. So what we're thinking is he got locked down with one of those does, and that's the last time we ever saw him. The next morning, we go in and decided to try to set up, like, right on the edge of the public next to the ag field, and we were going to set up by this, like, just old farm trash that was sitting there, and just try to get a shot. Well, we never ended up making it to that, because there was does, like, in the field already, like, it's kind of skylined when it's still dark, so we just kind of hunkered down. Still never saw the big buck. It's getting kind of not late, but the morning's pushing on. I think it's
like
been
7:30.
Yeah, it's been daylight for like 45 minutes or something. And I tell Eric, like, hey, dude, let's just go hunt deer. Well, he's not out here. We're not seeing him. Let's just go hunting. So we ditched that, decided to go back to the drainage where I almost shot the slobber buck. Didn't see anything there. And then we get back in the truck, drive to a glassing spot, look up this drainage, and about 3/4 of a mile up, I see a big framed buck standing in the bottom of the drainage, kind of like overseeing a doe. He's kind of like tending, not really locked down, but he's tending. Until Eric, like, okay, well, I can't tell what he is, but he's worth going to look at. He's big. So we mobilize, try to keep eyes on him. He dips down. We lose eyes. So we decide to just book it in, right, to go try to shoot this deer.
We were running at some point.
Yeah, yes.
Probably 200 yards we were running.
Yeah, for sure, man. And because it's like we want to make sure and get set up on an ambush point before the deer gets there. Mm-hmm. And you never know with rut bucks, like that doe might decide that she's mad about him being on her, and then the rut fest happens and they're chasing down the bottom of the canyon. Like urgency is key in those times, right? So we are running down. We kind of make a couple hills and dips, and I come up over the edge of this next hill, and, every time we kind of go slow right over the top, so we're looking, and I just see a deer butt just right over on the other side of the drainage. So I tell Eric, all right, let's dip down. We're going to make an ambush on this deer right here. And I'm thinking, oh, it's going to happen. And I'm nervous at this point in time. Like, I'm like, oh, man, like, this could be cool. I'm kind of getting hype. And then we're sitting there. We're sitting there, and it never happens. And we're like, what is going on? Where's this deer? I guess they hung up right here. So I start peeking my head out around the edge of this bluff, and finally stick out far enough and just see a doe. And I'm thinking, there's a good chance that the buck or the animal I saw wasn't the buck; it was just a doe in the bottom. And I thought that could be the chance, but at the same time, you couldn't push forward anymore with any deer in the bottom. So we kind of hang out there. But I'm also thinking maybe the buck is with her, and I just can't see him. So I do some grunting, I do a snort wheeze, nothing happens, and then peek out around, and the doe's gone. So I'm thinking, well, I guess she bedded. Let's actually rattled after that, see if we could get anybody to stand up. Nobody ever stood up. And I tell Eric, okay, well, there's some more habitat right up here below this other bluff that some deer could be bedded in. Let's go up there and just see if we can, spot one to stalk or something like that. And as we're doing that, another tiny buck pops his head out and kind of works around. He's looking for the rattling. Can't find it. We kind of have to wait on him. So we cross the bottom of the big drainage and go up on this other top of this bluff, kind of do some peeking over, kind of, I don't know. My heart's kind of half in it at this moment. Like, I'm thinking there's a good chance we could find a deer, but I just know whitetails, and shooting one on the ground is tough. Sneaking up and finding one that's bedded and actually getting a shot on it
before it sees you
is about near impossible. So I'm kind of thinking we're going to have to just...
If anybody can do it, though, it's old Eagle Eye Smith right here. I guarantee you.
I can see some stuff,
dude,
man.
You see some stuff, man.
Yeah, God has blessed me with eyes for sure. But brains, well, I'm kind of like, if I was a Wizard of Oz character, I'd be the one with the eyes, right? But anyway.
Kind of like a turkey.
That's right, dude. Instincts are good. Right. Intelligence kind of low. But so I slip up over this edge, and I'm looking down in these trees, kind of these little wispy things, and I'm thinking, man, this is so good. It's sunshiny out. It's kind of starting to get warm. Like there's so much shade right here. Like shade is the limited resource at this spot. There's not a lot of trees. So I'm thinking, man, deer have got to be in here. And if there's not one in here right now, then it's just not the right day. Like there'll be one here tomorrow. It's kind of what I'm thinking in my head. But I looked over what I thought was the best spot. I was like, well, I guess there's not. And Eric and I are kind of talking about going up and over the hill again and looking at another spot that has the same kind of stuff that we'd actually seen earlier the day before when we'd walked in to do some glassing. And about that time, I kind of turned my head to go up this trail along the edge of this bluff, and I just see the very end of a main beam and a brow tine behind it. And I said, oh my gosh, and hit the dirt automatically. And Eric has been following me around long enough now that he didn't really ask questions. He just sees if I hit the dirt, he hits the dirt, which is a good thing to have in a hunting partner, man. Just trust your guy. Like, don't be like, well, wait, dirt down there, is he? And I explained to him, thankfully we had a lot of wind at that moment. It was probably blowing 15, 18 in a good direction for us. So we could do some communication with this buck still at 40 yards. And we've got earth in between us and him at this point in time. But I'm like, Eric, I don't know how big he is. He looks decent. I might pass him. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to get a shot opportunity. But we should probably try to make a play on this deer and just see how it plays out. Not see what happens, right? But see how it plays out. Because I can't make a call now, but he might be something I want to take home. So the only way for us to do this, though, is we're going to have to, like, full-on belly crawl. Like, not just, like, kind of hunch over, but, like, full-on dirt on our stomachs. But I only have to do it like 5 yards. So we do that, kind of the whole like set your bow forward and then crawl up, set your bow forward. Did that, and then we got kind of behind another little rise and got out clean, because this is a place where if the deer took off, we'd have been able to tell. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, we got through that. We're actually in pretty good position on this thing, because we got a north wind. We're directly east of him, and he's looking kind of southwest. So I'm thinking, okay, we need to make just a little bit more north. That way, he doesn't get me with his 300-degree vision range like they have, and we'll be good. But at this point, we're like probably 15 yards from the deer, and straight
Probably
line
like
distance.
10 to 15 feet above him, right?
Yes. So we're above him, which is super helpful, right? Because if you're on,
it's like you're in a saddle almost.
That's exactly right. Draw, saddles, ditches, all of them. I am kind of like peeking over, making sure I can't see him, and we go into super stealth mode. Like take a half step and just chill and look. But we've got this pretty brisk wind, so we feel pretty good about our situation, except the fact that anytime I'm within 50 yards of a whitetail, I'm never comfortable, because they are just so keen, dude. We were seeing mule deer in South Dakota and stuff, and that was probably your first time to see mule deer like in South Dakota. And dude, how dumb are they compared to deer, right? Whitetail. They just, not that they're stupid, right? I love them. They're beautiful creatures, but they ain't got nothing on a whitetail. Not a thing. Especially mule deer does, dude. They will just look at you unless you throw rocks at them, man. Not that I did it, but you know what I'm saying. Anyways.
They are tasty looking, though.
Back to 15 yards from the deer. We're sneaking up, and we're getting real close. Like, so close that I'm like, is he there or not? And I tell Eric, it's like, hey, this is all in whisper sign language, right? But like, let's go this way 3 steps. And I do it kind of a little hand motion, I think, right? And so we take 2 of those 3 steps. I've already drawn my bow because it's kind of one of those situations like he's going to stand up and I'm going to shoot. And I'm like anchor pointed and everything doing this because I want to just be able to just, adjust where I'm aimed and release. But
kind of like Turtle Man.
Yeah. Sure.
You had never seen it?
I mean, you told me about Turtle Man all the time, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Like a beam, like a aim. I got on that thing.
I like that. I have to use it. So all of a sudden, 2 steps in, not 2 steps back, but 2 steps in, this doe or a deer goes and busts out. And I'm like, oh gosh, he's in a different spot we thought he was. And we look over and it's this doe that he had pinned up in there. We didn't realize she was there the whole time. And so that makes me kind of de-anchor. Eric kind of sees it too, kind of gets a little footage of her, and then I look back, and there he is looking up at her, just stationary, which never happens with whitetail. Like if that doe busts, he's out of there because he doesn't have any reason to be there anymore, right? So I'm thinking, okay, I have been gifted an opportunity here with a deer who is standing, I think, quartering away, not looking at me. And I take one glance at his antlers and say, yep, that's enough. and I kind of had to do that thing where I'm like, wait a second, I got to make sure I'm looking through my peep sight. So I kind of, take about a millisecond. It seemed like a long time. But to get everything lined up, put it right behind his shoulder, squeeze the trigger, arrow hits true. Oh, man. And I'm like, oh, this just happened. Oh, my gosh. Like, I just shot a deer on the ground that was bedded that we spot and stalked. Like, this is just insane, right? And Eric's, like, over my shoulder getting footage. Wasn't able to really get footage of the actual shot happening just because of the angles of stuff. But as soon as the deer takes out, Eric gets on him, follows him. It's awesome. But here's where the problem starts. This deer runs out there, but he doesn't fall over and die. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he's just rutted up and he's tough. And he makes it like 90 yards, ends up not following his doe and dipping down into a ditch. So I'm thinking, oh, he's going to die in there. He couldn't make it up that hill. Well, about 3 seconds later, he comes up the other side of the hill and goes over there about 200 yards out and is just standing there. It kind of hurt, but I can see his exit, and it's like front shoulder armpit, like in front of the bone, right? So like that soft spot on the front of your armpit is where the exit is, on like down in the white hair, right? And the entrance is behind the shoulder knuckle, about halfway up the body, maybe just a little bit more than halfway up the body. And if you look at any anatomy chart, you can't find one that's not Rip City, Kansas, okay? So I'm thinking, okay, any moment he's going to fall over. Any moment he's going to, freak out. Any moment he's going to tumble. And it never happens. He never does it. He kind of, you can tell he's hurt. He's not feeling good. And at that point, I believe I convey with Eric that, hey, this is not as good as we thought it was going to be. This might be a long day. And then I call you and say, hey, I just shot a big buck. He's really good. Looks like he's hit good, but he's not down yet. Can you head this way?
Well, actually, I don't think you asked me to head that way at first. And so I was like feeling a little bit better, starting to feel a little bit better. And I was like, I hadn't eaten anything in a few days. So I got me one of them Buc-ee's burritos out and I heated it up, got me some barbecue sauce, started eating it.
Yeah.
And,
Just the barbecue sauce?
just the barbecue sauce, because I hadn't feel good enough to eat the burrito yet.
Yeah.
No, and then I'm sitting there. I take like 2 bites out of the thing, and I'm like, finally just sat down. I'm feeling pretty sick still, and then you call me, and I answer, and you're like kind of a little bit like got a little desperation in your voice a little bit, and you're like, hey, you think you could just head on over, man? This guy's headed, kind of towards property line. He's a long ways from property line still right now, but you're just like, can you just make sure, watch this thing and see if he goes across and whatever. So go down there to that boundary and get on that ranch road and watch that, ranch road and see if he goes across it and then across the boundary and onto different property, private property or whatever. Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, sure. So I go down there to sit at that point. That's when I ended up coming. So
yeah,
took a couple calls, but
yeah. So I was like feeling good about it for the longest time because it's a good shot. And
kind of broadhead were you shooting?
I was shooting an iron wheel.
An iron wheel.
Yeah.
You ever heard anything bad about iron wheel?
People, they like to not say bad things about them.
I hadn't heard a single bad thing about them.
I don't have too much bad to say about them, but it ain't like a grenade on the end of your arrow. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't a sure thing. Yeah. It flew pretty good. Yeah. And I have a tactic.
At 15 yards, it flew pretty good. Huh?
I have a tactic, and this tactic held true for this. That if I'm on the ground in any heavy cover at all, I use a fixed blade. And then if I'm in a tree where it's not heavy cover or not super thick, I use an expandable. Or like in South Dakota, the grass was pretty short. And I was like, oh, this is expandable for sure. Or if it's a really windy day, it's good to use an expandable and just meter your shots. Don't do something crazy trying to shoot through grass with an expandable because you can go back to 2018. I missed a deer on the ground because my expandable caught a piece of grass. My arrow flew past him sideways, because of that happening. In this particular shot, you can see in the footage Eric took, I actually cut down a blade or two of grass shooting at the deer, and no effect on the air flight at that point in time. So
the landowner pay you for cutting his grass?
Yeah, man, bailed it too. But I don't get super desperate until this deer goes in this little ditch and kind of does what we think is bed up, and then he stands up 5 minutes later, and then I'm like, okay, this ain't good. Like, he should have went in there and died. And that's when I was like, hey, man, I don't know what this thing's going to do. He might head south. Can you go down and take your bow just in case? Mm-hmm. And he leaves that ditch. Or we hang up, Tyler and I do. He leaves that ditch, goes to the next one down, and finds this big old tree and just stands in the shade for, gosh, Eric, was it like 15 minutes?
Yeah, something like that.
He stood there for forever, just hurt, didn't want to move. You could tell he tried to start moving and then just would stand there again. And I'd imagine that he was feeling about like you were feeling on day 4, where it was just like, oh, I don't want to move, kind of deal.
Can I please not hunt?
Yeah. He was definitely not wanting to hunt. And he stood there, but he kind of did that duck thing where I think he stood there long enough where he recouped and felt good about moving, or he was headed south to water. There's a spring down there that we'd already seen deer go to, and there's one of the two things that, you never know. But this is a good 30 minutes after I shot him, he decides that he feels good enough to move, and he starts heading south. And Eric and I decide that we have got to do our best to get another arrow in this deer. Because before that, I was thinking, okay, I'm just going to let him be calm. Maybe he'll go over there, bleed out, and die, in a ditch. But when he starts walking at a decent chip, I'm thinking, well, he ain't dead yet. So we kind of bail, leave all our stuff sitting there, and I just go bow in hand, running across the prairie. Eric's shortly behind me. We're trying to make sure this deer doesn't see us. He actually pegs us on the side of the hill for like 2 or 3 minutes and then decides to keep on moving. We're pretty far from him at this point, but we drop down in this secondary drainage and come around, and we actually are in front of him and set up in the bottom with a big old expandable on, and I'm thinking, all right, this deer's going to come by in the bottom of this drainage. It's going to be fine. I'm going to shoot him at 40 yards, and we're all going to get pizza tonight. Well, that's not how it went. The buck came through the drainage, but instead of being in the bottom, he was kind of on the secondary lip, like up on the extra, creek lip or whatever, and he's somewhere between 75 and 80 yards. And I'm doing some frantic ranging because I don't expect him to be there. I frantically adjust my pin, and I think looking back, it was actually on 90, and he was probably more like 80. But I'd ranged something kind of in that 90 range right there in front of him. And I take a walking shot on this deer because, I've already hit him fatally. So, you just do whatever you can. And I actually lead him at his nose tip, but kind of down at vitals level. And left to right, I was pretty good. I would have probably center punched this deer, hit him in the lungs, and we would have all been celebrating there. But I just shot too high. I shot about 6 inches over his back or so. And then at that, he spooked from the sound of that arrow hitting the dirt behind him. And at that moment, I'm thinking, well, this might be over. Like, I might not ever see this deer again because I don't know how wounded he is. I know that a deer's not going to survive a shot through the chest cavity, but I don't know how bad it is. And he's trotting now. And a couple things after this really play into us actually getting the recovery of the deer. One major one we'll get to in a second. But he's running pretty hard down the bottom. I run out to kind of just try to get a bearing on where he's headed. He sees another deer that just happened to be in the bottom, and it kind of wigs him out a little bit, so he slows up. And I call Tyler and say, hey, I just shot at the deer, and he's running, and we hang up. And I'm thinking, well, it's over. There's no way Tyler's going to get to shoot this running deer. See ya, I'm thinking about, like, what do I do with my tag? Kind of that whole thing of, like, well, do I just do the whole noble thing of, like, well, killed the deer, so I'm going to eat my tag. Yeah, that's not really my style. But anyways, those are the thoughts running through my head, like it's over. And I see the deer hang up on top of a hill, and then he disappears over the edge. And I'm thinking, okay, there's a crossing right there that we actually hung a trail camera on a couple days prior because it's the best crossing of the south boundary fence, and it's like kind of tucked up into the property some. It's not actually the boundary because of the way the creek works. And I'm thinking, man, if there's a chance Tyler's right there, this deer might run him over and he can headlock it on the way by or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking, this is so far-fetched, but maybe. And this is where it pays to only hunt with people who actually know what they're doing. Because I can rely on Tyler Jones without instruction to set up in the best spot. And this is exactly what he does. Tyler sees that crossing. Well, why don't you just tell us your thought process?
So I had, when I first got there or whatever, I'm looking kind of down this ranch road, and I'm like, I can see a ways down there. And I knew you had said to take my bow. So I took my bow walking down the hill, and I was like, man, this whole, like, the creek bottom, or I guess that's kind of what you've been calling it, is a creek bottom, is pretty wide, really, because it's open country, right? And so there's a lot of places I could set up on this thing. And like I said, the creek makes the fence weird there, and it's a nice high fence, like high strung.
Oh, high fence.
Yeah.
High fence deer.
Yeah, it's a 5-stringer, you know what I mean?
It's a good cattle fence.
Yeah, it's not like some old nasty or whatever, but like there is this one place as I'm walking, kind of coming up to the creek, that there's only 4 strings, and it's like, a couple yards long, and I'm like, there's a trail coming across right there, I can see, and I'm like, that's definitely where a wounded deer would want to be, crossing the fence instead of 120 yards over there, anywhere in between. And of course I could have missed it, but like I stood beside this embankment, or little, like, it's just a little 5-foot rise, in the landscape, and it's kind of the side of it is sloughed off a little bit, so it's kind of straight up and down. So I'm just sitting there in this dirt or whatever, and when I look up the hill, like a little over 100 yards, I see that deer standing there, and I'm like, oh, kind of like, oh, there he is, whatever.
Freak out.
And I've been hanging out there, I'm kind of using that little thing as a windbreak more than anything because I was kind of chilly, and I see him coming, so I'm like, dadgummit. So I'm like I didn't even have an arrow knocked. I did not expect it to go this far,
Yep.
And I knocked my arrow real quick, and when I look up, he's like 60 yards, and he's still he's walking. He's not really running anymore too much, but he's on a good clip, coming at me. And dude, this is one of the coolest memories I'll have in deer hunting probably. So he starts coming or whatever, and when I peek back up, he's like 35 yards coming straight at me, and I feel like he sees me whenever I peek up, and he kind of stops for a second, and I just like hold still, and then he keeps walking, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's coming. So I'm sitting here by this embankment, like with the wind break more than anything, and like, because if I'd have really been thinking it was going to happen, I wouldn't have been 4 yards from the crossing. Okay. But I was using the little embankment there to give me some wind block, and so I'm like, dadgummit, this dude is about to come to 4 yards. And so like I can see him. I'm keeping an eye on his rack as he's coming because I don't want to see his eyes because then he can see me, right? Mm-hmm. But I can see his rack over the top. And so I'm watching that rack, and I'm like, dude, K.C. did not tell me how big this deer is. This thing is huge. And so he's like coming, and I'm like, dadgummit, I can't mess this up. And so finally I see his rack come up to the fence like 5 yards from me. Oh gosh. And then he jumps over, and it's like a 250-pound animal jumping over the fence at 5 yards. And but when he came up to the crossing, I drew. I drew before that. Sorry. I drew when he was within 20 yards, and so like I had to get real close to this embankment because it's not like steep really, Mm-hmm. And so get real close, and I'm kind of leaning to my right as a right-hander, so I'm having to draw like kind of hunched over. So just if you haven't ever done it, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. So try it sometime. Yeah. But I draw, and I finally get it back, and then I kind of camp my bow back up straight vertical, and then he comes up to that fence line, and I'm like, I'm not even looking through the peep or nothing. Like, I need to get this thing on my face. And so, like, because I'm trying to straighten up without getting seen. Because if I straighten up too much, he can see me, And so I finally get, like, straightened up and get everything, like, on anchor points and stuff. And then he jumps. And I'm like, oh, man. And so, like, when he jumps the fence and goes into this little ranch road right here, he's, like, has momentum going from jumping the fence. And so he like is kind of trotting, and then as soon as he like breaks that trot, I just put it on his put it where I thought it needed to go and shot him, and it happened so fast I didn't know where it hit for sure. Mm-hmm. He takes off. I drop my bow and I run up the hill and look down into the bottom where he takes off, and he runs like 120 yards maybe, and like stops. He busts a doe out of that draw right there, and like things are going wild, dude. And he stops under these like willow trees down in there and starts like getting real weird. And all of a sudden he just goes down, dude. And I was like, oh my goodness! So it happened. I was like so excited, dude. And so I call K.C. and I go, hey, I killed him. And he literally goes, whoa.
Lost my mind, dude.
It is so loud that I can hear you louder in like 300 yards away than I can hear it on the phone, dude. I was like, it was the weirdest thing. I was like looking around like, is he close to me? It was, dude. And you did that for like a minute straight. Dude, just, wow.
I'm telling you, because I just thought there was no way it was going to happen. Like I knew I was going to get a call from you, and it's like, man, he's gone.
Got by me.
Yeah. But no, it actually played out. And this is so like cliche because I don't know, the team thing or whatever, people talk about that with this whole production stuff, but like, no lie, I don't know how you get much more teamwork than that because we both shot this deer.
Yeah.
It was insane. And I still believe my shot was lethal, but I mean, who knows how long it would have taken,
So talk about why you believe your shot was lethal.
Well, upon the what's the word for this? It's not the it's not the autopsy. It's something topsy. What's it called? Do you remember?
Topsy Haze.
Topsy Haze. Yeah, I can't remember. Necropsy. I think. Might be what it's called. But I actually hit the deer in both lungs.
Yeah,
I hit the top lobe of both the lungs. Went through one and then cut the top of the other pretty substantially, but there was hardly any blood on those cuts. And all I can figure is, here's, retrospectively, he broke the arrow off when his shoulder started moving, which happens a lot. Even when you're shooting those vectors, they're tough and they're heavy walled, like they're durable, but they're no match for a deer bone going sideways into it.
Yeah,
right?
like I told Isaac, who owns Vector, yesterday, actually, I talked to him on the phone. He's like, did the arrow break? And I was like, yeah. And he seemed kind of disappointed, but I'm like, dude, I'm 200 pounds. If I wanted to snap that thing, I could snap it like a twig, right? This deer is heavier than I am. It has more muscle mass than me.
Especially after 5 days being sick.
That's right. He's going to break that thing. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is.
Oh, yeah. And so, but for me, I'm shooting the hammer. You're shooting the Zimmer. ZMR. But the hammer, for me, is a 600 grain arrow flying at like 250, right? So it's like zipping it. Even though Z is on the other one. Anyways, I didn't get a pass through, and I couldn't figure out why when it happened. Because, like, man, I didn't hit anything super hard in there, I don't think, with that shot. I couldn't figure it out. And he broke the arrow. After we recovered the deer and did all our stuff, guys, go check out those pictures. Tyler and Eric threw it down. It looks so cool. I was like, I got to go find this arrow. First of all, because that iron wheel is expensive, and I wanted to find that thing. And, it's just a part of the story that you kind of want. But we were looking around, and Eagle Eye Eric was almost, what were you almost nicknamed? False Alarm Eric?
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, no, never mind. He did that to me today, I think, on something. I can't remember what it was. But anyways, he found both parts to the arrow. He found the fletching side first, which was cool, but I'm like, well, I really want the other part. That's worthless right there.
Yeah.
But I did figure out that, well, I knew this from just watching him, but I didn't get a pass through, and that fletching was hanging out his entrance side. And then we found the broadhead side, and the broadhead it looks like you shot a piece of tinfoil through something. It's not bent or anything, but there's so much edge chatter on the razor side of it. I'm just thinking, okay, these iron wheels are supposed to be top notch, and I believe they are. Either I got a knockoff or something's up. This wouldn't do this just going through a couple ribs on a deer or glancing off of a shoulder bone. And then I got to thinking, it's like, I never fully confirmed that deer was not still bedded. He came into my vision, so I assumed he stood up. But what I actually think happened was he was looking downstream in the drainage. The doe busts out, and he kind of does that whole thing where he like gets up on his front knees a little bit and looks the other direction. And I thought that was him standing. So what I think actually happened is I shish kebabbed him, and that arrow hit the rock behind him and stopped, and that's why I didn't get the full pass through. But that doesn't really explain the lack of lethality of the shot, except for if he's still bedded. We all know that vitals do something a little bit different in bedded animals than they do in standing animals. I'm thinking maybe if he's up on his knees, everything inside your body is kind of sloshing around somewhat. It's all somewhat connected except for shoulder bones. Those things come right off, but everything else is kind of connected, right? So if he's up on his knees, maybe his lungs shift back a little bit in his body, and I don't get near the full-on hit on lungs like I would on a deer that's parallel, spine parallel with the ground. That's all I can figure.
We do know that you hit both lungs.
Yes.
And it did.
You can see the wide part of the broadhead and the bleeders through both lungs. It's definitely not the 3-blade that you shot through the lungs, right? Yeah. And all you can chalk it up to is that's not the most vital of vital spots. He would definitely die of that sooner or later. But those deer are huge, which means more blood. And, look at the heart on that thing. I saved the heart to eat, I think, somewhere. And
my fridge. We didn't get that,
Yeah. And it's the size of an elk. So he's got quite the pumper on him.
Yeah.
And then also they're just got all the testosterone in the world on November 8th, right?
Well,
so
I also think there's this aspect of open country deer having this marathon type of deal, like lung capacity and stuff.
He's not, I mean, he had plenty of body fat on him, but he wasn't slob body Iowa. You know, he was lean and mean. And could definitely cover country. You know, and that's a huge point. You know, there's a reason why Ethiopians are so good at marathons. It's because where they live is like 9,000 foot of elevation, and they're all pretty small body people. Like they can, and this deer's by no means small body, but like that's why they're good at marathons. These deer live where they have to do that. I mean, if you've ever chased an elk through the mountains, you understand why. How can this 800-pound critter just outrun me? You know, and that's why. But it was a wild experience. Cannot believe it happened. So thankful for y'all for helping me go through it all, you know. And
I'm thankful you put made him slow down a little bit before he came by me. You know,
slow him down a little bit. Run by a little slower next time, right? But golly, man, I don't know. To go back to cliches, I don't know about if I've ever been on a roller coaster that was that intense. Last year, my Kansas buck was. I thought I'd lost him, and we found him the next day. But this was so different because I knew we had lost him until you told me that you finished him off. I could not believe it.
And it all happened quicker than last year, too.
That's right. That's right. But, after that, pizza ensued. We had a good day. Tyler even ate pizza even though he was sick. And then
that night was the worst
got
night.
himself a sicker. And still found a way to go kill a gigantic buck in a day or two. So that'll be part 2 of this deal. Guys, thanks for listening to the story. I know it was long, but hopefully if you follow what we do, you enjoy those deer stories. And, man, I love telling it. So I hope you really like it. That video is going to air pretty soon.
We're working on Kansas right now. If you're listening to this, there's already a Kansas video out if I can get this stupid thing to work. and also Hunter killed while we were up there as well. So that's going to release as well. So go check that out.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Remember, the season is not over. We have still got a lot of time left. If you hadn't shot a deer, that is okay. You don't even have to shoot a deer this year. You know why? Because
we'll shoot them for you.
It'll be fine. It'll be okay. You know, like
that's true.
We love to eat what we kill. We definitely eat as much of it as we can. We'll probably give away a little bit of Christmas gifts of some sausage and stuff this year. But, you know, we do live in some of the greatest times to exist as a human there has been. I mean, if you want to go down a spiritual route, that's a lot different. We'll talk about that if you want to. But as far as like being able to survive, we're pretty high up there these days. You know, you can go to the grocery store if you need to. Go get you a burger at Sonic or something. But, you know, we do love to do this thing, and you've got plenty of time to go out there and get it done the rest of this season. So remember that. Don't get too down in the dumps, and remember that this is your element.
Live in it.